Hey there. We're going to talk about chapter 6, which deals with organizational change and innovation. And what exactly is change? Well, change is the idea and changing the dynamic of a process, flow, to try to create a better system. It doesn't always work that way, but the effort and the heart is there. But sometimes it doesn't work, and we'll get into that. So what are some drivers of change? Well, it could be technology, of course. We're seeing this revolution in AI right now. People's attitudes about how they want to work. We've seen this a few years ago with COVID and people wanting to work from home, and then the resistance of going back to work to do their job. So that's a organizational change example as well. Now, there are many reasons why change is created. You can see some points in this slide here. The marketplace, of course. If someone comes out with a new product, a new process, our organization may have to keep up with it, may have to change our processes. Technology we talked about earlier with like AI, for example, new software. Labor markets. Perhaps that we have a shrinking labor market and the skill sets that we need for our company isn't available. So we may have to try to retool our current employees or try to change our process. And of course, economic changes where if we have a downturn, we may have to change our process a little bit, maybe dial back a little bit of our strategy. But if we're in a booming time, maybe we change our processes and increase our output and our throughput. So there's different ways and different reasons that the change occurs. Now, the internal forces that create change, strategy and map. So strategy should be reviewed at least every 6 months. Now, on a comprehensive level, every year, but we always want to look at every 6 months or so, and we need to make any tweaks to it, we do. Composition of workforce, again, the skill sets are the skill sets needed to do the job. A change agent. This is something that I hope you could do. And what a change agent is that person that is the driver behind the change, the person that wakes up thinking change. They eat their breakfast thinking change. They go to their place of employment thinking about change. And this enthusiasm that they have for it, this the enthusiasm and also the understanding and try to relate to people to get them on board with the change process. That's a change agent. And for any change to be successful, you need to have this person or persons on board in order to make the change be successful. Now, there's a couple different approaches to this. We got the calm waters approach we're going to explain, and then we'll talk about the White Rapids metaphor type here in a second. Now, what you see here is a three-step change process. This was actually developed by Kurt Lewin in 1947. And we're actually going to have Kurt Lewin be one of our first keywords. And what this process entails is that the unfreezing is that we take where we're at now and we're just going to move it just a little bit. And then we stay there stationary for a second, freeze. And then we refreeze and the whole process starts all over again. And so it's a stair-step process. This process is Lewin thought of this in 1947. Here we are 80 years later, and we're still talking about what a change process is. I want to talk about the calm waters for a second. This was done. I want to touch on the calm waters. Now, what you see in front of you is the three-step process. This was developed by Kurt Lewin in 1947. And it's typically called the stair-step process. And so Kurt Lewin is going to be one of our first keywords. What you're seeing here is that we take the process the unfreezing is we want to make the change. And so we make the change, and then all of a sudden freeze. And then we take this refreezing and then we unfreeze it, we move again. And so it's a stair step. And what you'll find is that people are going to be more accepting of change in more incremental steps than one large step, as we're going to talk about with the rapid waters here in just a second. So when you do your change process, little baby steps, explain to people why it's important and what's in it for them, because there's going to be some hesitation about change from the rank and file, and we have to make sure that they're on board for this. So again, this Lewin stair step is we refreeze, we make our change, and we freeze. I'm sorry, unfreeze, make the change, refreeze. Now, there's the Whitewater Rapids change. This is something called discontinuous change. What discontinuous change is that you have a process, and all of a sudden you just make this dramatic change. Now, you see this in an industry and change. So you take a look at AI and how AI is changing how we do work and how we approach work. That is a discontinuous change because it's really been a rapid change. And so this rapid change shocks the system. It shocks the culture of an organization. And so what has to be happen here is that the person, whether it be the change agent, the manager, the leader, whoever, when they shock the system like this, they have to prepare their employees. And once this change occurs, they have to talk to their employees and make sure that everything is good, because psychologically, this is going to be a change. This could be a change physically. And people are going to feel as if they have no control over their work anymore because it's really large change. So it's about communicating after the change occurs. Now, organizational development. This is going to be our second keyword. And so what this is we want to help our people understand the change process, and we want to look at what they feel about it and how do they perceive the change according to the lenses in which they look at work. Some people are going to be like, great, this is good. So other people are going to be like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be good at all. And so you see the words in here: a plan change by focusing on attitudes and values. Now, it's a one-on-one. You can't just cookie cut all this. You have to talk to your people. Now, I realize in a large industry, in a large company, that's gonna be hard to do, almost impossible to do. But a smaller company, a medium-sized company, absolutely. You can have town hall meetings. You can talk to people one-to-one, have sit-downs, whatever the case may be. But understand what they're thinking. Let them be heard. So some ways that we can get information, of course, survey feedback. We can be a Likert scale. A Likert scale is like the 1 through 7, where 1 is like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. 7, this is great. So that's a Likert scale. You can do that. Team building, we can take a look here and say, okay, here's the change we're doing. Here's how we're going to do the change. We're going to work together and see how this change works. In my experience, in terms of dealing with change, I've been mostly part of the process consultation. This is what we're doing. How's it work for you? What advantages are you seeing? What disadvantages are you seeing? I have not taken part in a survey feedback, and I've been in team building a little bit, not for change, but most of it, like I said, has been for process consultation. All right, so you heard me talk about some slides, earlier slides, about people might be a little bit hesitant to change. There's a couple of reasons here. Number one is uncertainty. If you recall a couple chapters back, we talked about uncertainty is that we know something's going to happen, we just don't know where. That's what uncertainty is here in change. We know change is coming, we just don't know how it's going to affect us. The habit. We're used to doing things a certain way, and what happens is that we get into a comfort zone. And the Lewin stair step we talked about gets people out of that comfort zone. It expands the comfort zone, but people will drift back to get back into the habits in which they want to work. So we have to be sure that it's a comfortable process, that people can adapt to it. Now, the concern over personal loss, that's information. And a lot of people will say, I have this information that's valuable to me. That's what makes me a valuable person in this company. Well, somewhat true, mostly false. The reason being is that the last thing you really want to do is hoard information to yourself, thinking that gives you power. It really doesn't. And I want you to consider something too. For you to advance in your organization to a higher position, someone is going to have to be able to do your job. And the only way they can do your job is you share your knowledge and teach them and train them to do your job. So that way you can advance to the next job, which hopefully somebody taught you about how to do it. So that's that personal loss, I understand, but it has to be taken with a grain of salt. Now, the idea that the change might be in the organization's best interest, that's true. We may look at this and say, hey, this isn't going to work. Previous experience where I've been, this isn't going to work. I don't know. You should have the opportunity to voice your opinion, or you should give the opportunity to the employees to voice their opinions. And it's how you respond to those concerns will help determine if this change is going to be accepted or not. Now, change will cause stress. Reason being, people are losing control. They lose control of their process, their habits are changing, their knowledge base is changing. So it's going to be very stressful for them. And you can see this idea about the symptoms of stress in terms of psychological. Yes, absolutely. Physical, they may have to go somewhere different. They may have to work in a different plant. They may have to drive more. And so you see the subtext there about headaches, potential heart attacks. That's an extreme, but there will be some increased stress. I can definitely see changes in heart and breathing rates because maybe they're not comfortable where they're at. But the idea about the heart attack, and that's a little dramatic. But there will be stress in a change process. There'll be stress on the leadership team, management, and also the people on the floor. Guarantee it. Okay, so now we're talking about innovation a little bit. One of the things that you want to encourage from your workers is that think out of the box. I know it's a really old used phrase, but you get the idea. Encourage new ideas. And another thing too, encourage learning. So if they try something and it fails, that's okay. They learn something from it. And so you see this idea about the innovation is key to success. It is. But the only way we can innovate is to have the freedom to be creative and the freedom to fail. Once that occurs in the organization, then that innovation is going to go through the roof. So please promise me as you listen to this, don't be that manager that stresses out over a mistake in a creative process. It doesn't matter because the person learned from it. All right, so in regards to innovation, the innovation process, there's perception, of course, what we need, what needs to happen, what we think needs to occur. And then inspiration. There could be something out there that you're like, hey, this is great. And maybe you find that in a class. Maybe you find that in church. Maybe you find that on a team. And you say, yeah, you know what? This is a great, great idea. And that something inspires you. It's happened to me. I'm doing studies on stress on a dance team because I had students that were missing class because they were all stressed out about competition. I looked and see, is there any type of studies on this? There wasn't. So now I'm going to do one. And so hopefully that study I do can help other people along down the line. But that's the inspiration process. And then I think you're pretty good about innovation. Now, encouraging innovation, you can see here in terms of the human resource, yes, commitment to training. The more you educate your people, the more they're going to be exposed. The more they're exposed, the more ideas they can have, a more like what if scenarios. In terms of structure variation, the organic structure. The organic structure is where those ideas come from below and work their way up. I hope that you have an organic structure where you work because it's easier for the employees. It's less stressful. In regards to minimal time pressure, you got time to work on this. It's a side project that you fill in. Now, if there's something that's really hot, you have an idea that, hey, this is going to work, then maybe you want to press time a little bit. But typically in these, there's not going to be a lot of time stress. We're going to take a look at culture and innovation. So in regards to innovation, there has to be an acceptance of ambiguity. We have to accept that there's unknowns and there's things that we just don't know. And also, along with those lines, is the acceptance of risk. And so the risk comes in financially and also in time. So financially comes in when paying the employee, also in terms of the material that might be needed to create the process, and then also the time it might take to possibly market this product. So there's some money involved in innovation as well. So then we have the idea champions. These are individuals that really feel strongly about the innovation of the product. Now, there's going to be some skepticism within the organization, and what their role is, they being ideas champion, is to win these people over. And so they have to do some internal sales and internal marketing to prove that the process that's been created or the product that's been created will actually be successful. So we got a couple different types of innovation. We got the disruptive innovation that blows everything up. That changes everything. And I got a slide for you next to show you some of the disruptors. So we take a look at this. And so the sandwich business, the CDs, compact disc, iTunes changed everything. Music went digitally. I don't know about you, but I still listen to CDs. I like CDs. So another key word is going to be disruptive innovators. And so you take a look here in terms of innovators. So the portable radio, and now you had the Sony Walkman. I had a Walkman too back in the 80s. I also had a Discman too, where we put CDs into there. So anyway, I digress. But anyway, so we live through disruptors. Many of you may be listen to iTunes rather than CDs. I imagine most of you do, but these disruptors change things, and it changes the game. Finally, last thing we'll talk about is skunk works. And what happens here is that a group of individuals or an individual can do whatever they want. They can try to do a new process. They can work autonomously and try to create something new. And there's not a lot of pressure on from corporations. 3M, Minnesota Mining Manufacturing, they are one of the most famous skunkworks organizations, and the one that we probably use the most is the Post-it note. That was a skunkworks project from 3M many, many years ago. Okay, so there's my discussion with chapter 6. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'm sorry this got a little bit longer than normal. Take care of yourselves. Have an awesome day. And let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. Take care.